for some reason, like, you don't realize it until you actually experience it, that you're like, all this kind of subtle vulnerabilities that you feel on a daily basis, like, once those, not that they completely go away, because we're always going to be somewhat vulnerable to something, but it really it reflects on all areas of your life. You know, how you interact with your partner, how you interact with business partners, how you interact with coworkers, how you set boundaries for yourself, like, just the level of confidence that you get from knowing that. It's so strange how it really permeates all other areas of your life and your relationships, you know, and your connections. And so that, to me, is the most rewarding part of this, is watching women kind of like experience that through the training and them reporting on that and really sensing that. Because that is the ultimate goal, is not just like, oh, let's all choke guys out left and right, you know, like walk around this world beating people up. That's not the goal. The goal is that we won't necessarily need to, because we exude this confidence and this, you know, this feeling and this ability that we are capable of doing that. And that we if we need to, we can go there.
Welcome to Black Belt Beauty Radio, a podcast fueled by a passion to support your journey in developing your most beautiful and optimal performance in life. Each episode is driven with the intention to elevate your mind. When we elevate our mind, we elevate our life. So get ready. It's time to rise. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Black Belt Beauty Radio. Today's conversation is with one of my closest girls, Eve Torres Gracie. Many of you probably already know Eve because she's been out in the world doing big things for quite some time now. But for those of you who are not familiar with her yet, I'm excited to share this conversation with you so that you can get a glimpse of who Eve is and how this incredible woman, you know, goes through her life, because her mindset and her process is a major factor in how she's able to be genuinely a high-performing, high-functioning individual. So brief background before I hit play, Eve holds a degree in engineering from USC, which I think is truly badass. And, you know, post-graduation, she did some dance and modeling work, which eventually led her to a competition for the WWE that she would win, and working with the WWE became her career life for several years. She's actually currently still an ambassador for them. But, you know, while she was working with them, she was killing it in that scene. She was a hot commodity, Divas champion for several years, and just all in, giving it everything she got, which wasn't easy, and you'll learn about that in our conversation, but she loved it. So she eventually retires, and part of what led her to her retirement was that during that time with the WWE, she discovered two loves of hers simultaneously. She discovered her love for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which she holds a purple belt in, and at the very same time, she discovered her love for her husband of many years now, Rener Gracie. As she got deeper into her jiu-jitsu game and, you know, her and her husband got deeper into their relationship, they really, you know, they teamed up and found this kind of hole in women's self-defense that, you know, they were able to fill, essentially. And they've created what I feel is a movement called Women Empowered. It's a program that stems from, you know, the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, but it's actually so much more than that. And, you know, there's a lot of different modalities for self-defense these days. And I think that once you listen to Eve's perspective and approach that her and her husband share towards Women Empowered, I think that you'll discover why this particular program is so unique. So I'm excited for you to hear it through her voice, because her voice is a big part of what makes it so special too. So before I hit play, I'll just say a few things about my girl on a personal level, which, you know, it's never easy for me to do these intros, especially when I'm talking about someone that is as close to me as Eve is, you know, because there's no way to really reverently summarize all the amazing things that she is, but she's really that woman that you look at and you go, damn, how are you doing all of it? And not just because, you know, she's doing all of it. She's a mommy. She's a entrepreneur. She's, you know, a wife. She's such an incredible friend. a loving, supporting friend. But the thing that makes Eve so special in my mind is as she's doing all of it, she is so gracious, graceful, and composed. So she's not killing herself and burning herself out while she's maintaining all of these amazing things that she's, living and creating and pursuing in her life. She's doing it with, the most, she's cool, man. Cool as a cucumber. Is that what people say? She's just a dope human. So I'm going to hit play and let you, feel that on your own, and it's very easily detectable. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with this remarkable, inspiring, empowering, badass woman that is my girl, Eve Torres Gracie. Enjoy. Eve, I look down right now and I saw some queens on your slippers. Mm-hmm. I smiled and I couldn't wait to expose that on this podcast that I'm so excited to do with you right now. Yeah. By the way, queen is very appropriate, obviously.
Thank you.
Yeah, girl. So, fuck yeah, let's drop in. I love you.
I'm so happy we're doing this finally.
I know. So, okay, I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening to this already know about you, but for those who don't, can you give I'm sure it's not easy because there's so much to you, but like a brief kind of background of who you are and where you come from, and then we'll pick it all apart?
Yeah, I can. I'll probably leave out some important details, so I tend to do that when talking about myself. But originally I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and then I moved to LA for school. I went to USC, University of Southern California, and I went to pursue an engineering degree, which I got, and then naturally went into wrestling after that. So I pursued professional dance for a year, and then transitioned into WWE. And so I worked for WWE for 5 years and had a great time there. Was 3-time champion there. Be happy to talk about some of those experiences today. And then transitioned out of it in 2013. And now I work full-time for with my husband in empowering women through self-defense with our Gracie Women Empowered program. And that is my focus and my passion and my calling right now.
Yeah, that's so rad. That was great. Thanks. I didn't know how you were going to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, I also did some films and TV shows in between there too. That's in there too.
I know, just a few. What was the last one that you did with what's his name?
Jackie Chan.
Yeah, hell yeah. You were badass. Like, what was your name in that?
But my name was Dasha.
Yeah, you were Russian or something, right?
Dasha.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, not too many people. It was definitely a bucket list thing. I'm like, I literally left that day. I was like, I just fought Jackie Chan today. Like, that happened.
No big deal.
Fought Jackie Chan. I can die happy now.
It's so funny.
He's such a childhood hero of mine.
Yeah.
And, he's just amazing. And he is actually who you would think he would be when you meet him and work with him.
I bet.
He's an absolute genius.
Yeah.
And I feel like geniuses are always borderline a little crazy.
Absolutely. Truly.
They are. They have to be. And he would come up with these ideas and you're like, how is that going to work? You're almost thinking how are we going to pull that off? And sure enough, his stunt team and his amazing mind just makes this vision that he has for this scene happen. Right there. It wasn't even something that's been planned out for months. He's like, oh, let's do this. Great. And then somehow it happens.
That's so amazing. That's very kind of Bruce Lee of him, right?
Oh,
too. I mean,
totally.
They deserve their own, not
for
to
sure.
say, but I mean, that's what Bruce would do.
Yeah.
Not like this, and just on the spot. What a rad experience for you. I mean, I think that, so you were a villain in the movie.
Always.
Which is, and what's so funny about that is for you're one of my closest, and, for all of that, all of the people who know you and love you on this level, we all kind of look at you as, look at your mug. It's like the Wonder Woman, right? So you're not the dark. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I think that's actually hot. Maybe that's actually more fun for you because in real life, you are the Wonder Woman. But then when you go into these movies and these sets, it's you get to be the dark badass. Come at me.
Well, yeah, it's actually super liberating. Having that experience. I remember in wrestling when I we call it turning heel.
Turning
I know.
heel.
It's like when you turn to there's like the big
dark
face
side.
and the heel, right? When you turn to the bad guy. When that happened for me, it was like when I finally was able to come out of my shell in WWE, and I think just as a person, because it's hard to make people like you, especially in the wrestling world. We'll just jump there real quick.
Yeah,
But
totally.
like, in the wrestling world, I came in basically not as a wrestler, meaning I hadn't been wrestling in the independent circuits for 10 years and then joined it. I came in what they considered to be like a Diva Search winner, which was how they found me.
Got it.
So I had a lot of respect to earn with the wrestling fans, with the viewers, and even with my coworkers. So it was, it was a lot of hard work to earn that. So in the beginning, they're like, oh, just go out there and smile and be a baby face. And I'm like, these people are shitting on me. Like, they do not care about me whatsoever. And granted, we didn't have many good stories to tell or anything like that at the time. So it was actually really hard being, trying to force being a good guy that people are supposed to like, people are just supposed to like you because you wear like shiny colors and smile.
Right.
So when I got to turn heel and when I finally turned to be a villain, it was so liberating because I was like, actually, it's pretty easy to make people hate you. Much easier to make people hate you than it is to force them to like you. Especially when there's like no story behind who you are. Like when they can't get to know you and just go out there and wrestle a few moves and then come out, which is what was happening back then for like the women's division. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was really liberating. And like, once you can go out there and be like just booed by an entire audience, you're like, wow, I can do anything.
You can
right?
do anything.
Like,
you got nothing. Like you don't. It's like kind of like you don't care. Like you got nothing to lose.
Yeah, you don't.
could be a total asshole, and you're like, I'm doing my job, and I'm doing it well.
Yeah, it was so. And I think also because I've spent my life being a people pleaser. I think.
Yeah.
And WWE for many reasons, both on screen, but also, and like in the ring and behind the stage. Behind the scenes, I would say was the first time I like had that realization. Like you can be what you was the best version of yourself you think you are, and there will still be people who don't like you. And like coming to that realization was so important to me as a woman.
How old were you when you started?
I started when it was WWE when I was 23.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like having that realization is really liberating where you're like, oh, it's not my responsibility to make people like me. Like I just have to do me. I have to keep being who I am. And as long as I'm proud of who I am, then nothing else matters. Yeah. So all that by way of saying I do prefer being the bad guy. It's way more fun.
Well, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
It's cool because you really are. I mean, when you think about it, it's like you're not actually harming people. You're not actually committing a crime. But there's, we have the sun and the moon for a reason.
Totally.
Dark and light. Yeah. And I really do believe that, that is, it's nature. It's natural. I think everyone has a dark side. And dark is not to be interpreted, in my mind at least, as bad or negative or evil. No. It's just it's just not the, it's not rainbows and bubbles and all. Yeah. It's like, for me, it's listening to Portishead and getting in, or Depeche Mode, some dark songs and sitting in my, journal by candlelight and just letting whatever. I'm just saying, like,
no, you need
good.
It. You need it. And for me, I never really had it because, you spend your life trying to be, at least for me, not everybody, but I struggled with that so much, like always trying to be liked and trying to be, and not artificially liked, but just always trying to be on my best behavior kind of thing. Yeah. And so it's nice when you're like, I get to be a bad girl for a little bit and just have fun with it and know that it was really liberating and kind of empowering for me.
It's such a great age. So okay, you say it's like you want people to be proud of you. Let's go into your family really quick, just because. So you have a brother and a sister who are both amazing. Both your parents are rad as well. I love your family so much. Can you talk about that a little bit, like your connection with them? Just because I feel like that serves such a big part in, like, even everything you just spoke about, right? Like you obviously would. I imagine growing up, there's a lot of respect in your family for each other. So I'm sure that played a part in you wanting to please and
yeah, it was. And it was never it's funny, as you get older, you start just like really trying to deconstruct like your childhood and think about everything, especially when you become a parent, everything that kind of played a role in the person you are, and the good and the, bad or not so good, or just what was.
Right.
And I think a lot about that, about how, and some of it I think is innate. I think there are some people who just kind of like are just born that way, who are a little bit more, again, like the pleasers, I guess I would say, or like the achievers, and and I think part of that was innate in me, but I was definitely like battled perfectionism in my life. I'll use the word battle because I literally remember my dad like having a conversation with me. I was in 6th grade, and I was up till like almost 2 a.m. working on a project, and my dad's like, yeah, you're like, how old are you in 6th grade? 11?
Yeah,
or
11
something?
or 12.
Yeah. He's like, basically, I'm going to need you to chill out. Like, I like, you need to recognize like what's happening here and why you're like so obsessed over this. And really, he was looking at my mom is the same way. My mom is extremely, extremely accomplished. She's an attorney. She was one of the first, when she was in law school, she was one of the first women, especially a woman to be pregnant, like, and to have children back then. Yeah. So she's just really high achieving. Yeah. It was like kind of unheard of at that time. For she's one of very few women, but really accomplished and worked really hard, and so I saw that, and obviously that had a great impact on me. But it also, I think, was like, I'm very similar to her, where we kind of have a hard time knowing when to stop. And I've learned a lot about that and myself, I think, over the years. And part of that is watching her and watching how that doesn't work. She ultimately was diagnosed with cancer, and I firmly believe that, a big part of that was stress and working herself literally almost to death. Yeah. And she recovered from that eventually, but it was a big wake-up call, I think, for my family. And that was actually after that happened, my dad that's when he had that talk with me. He's like, basically, don't be like your mom.
So you were that young when she got cancer?
Yeah, I was in 4th grade.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I was in 4th grade. So this was 6th grade.
Yeah.
But he kind of saw some of the same patterns in me, and he's like, yeah, just like, I remember that talk very well, because it wasn't just like, hey, relax, kid. It was like, I'm actually really worried about you. Yeah. And this is like something you need to be aware of is happening. And I don't think it went away then, for sure, but I went through college and, again, pursued an engineering degree. And so I was always I actually really enjoyed academics and did very well in them. But it's interesting that I didn't pursue any path from there. So it's like I went through it, and it was almost like just to accomplish something. Like, it's kind of like you're set on this path to just like, I just liked accomplishing tasks and like doing them well. And then, but it never really built what I would say, and this is kind of like, again, now that I'm deconstructing my past and what I think about for, my children. But it's like I didn't have, I don't know, it's like I wasn't really working towards building an extreme passion for one thing, or what I wanted to actually do, or who I wanted to be.
Purpose.
Yeah, I didn't have a purpose.
Right.
I mean, I was literally like, well, if I go to school for engineering, for sure I'll have a job when I get out. Like,
yeah.
And which is true. And I did actually enjoy it. I was always like very math and science oriented, and took to it really well. But it's just interesting how beyond that, I'm like, yeah, I don't find myself being drawn to this for like my life purpose.
I think that at that age, where we are now, I'm 40 now, and when you look back at those years where you're going into college or university, I mean, come on, you're a kid. And I think there are some people who maybe at a very, very young age, for whatever reason, come to understand their purpose, or at least a part of it, maybe a pathway. Maybe it's like, I'm going to the Olympics, and then that leads to something deeper and bigger. But I don't really think that for the majority, because this, even for myself, it's hard to know what your purpose is until you know more about who you are. Absolutely. And you got to know how you know who you are is you got to do life. And you haven't done life at 18, 19, 20. And so what's beautiful is that you had a focus, and that's so important, something driving you and something that you were naturally good at. And I want to get into that actually, because it's just, I am so proud of that, like engineering, no big deal. And I don't know how many people actually know that about you. I mean, maybe, some of your deeper fans do, but it's like, that's a big deal. And it almost seems so contrasting to like, everything else. But to just finish my point, it's just that, it makes sense that you, you just had to do more life and live more life. And really, I think to kind of simplify it, it just comes down to really connecting with who Eve is while you're also creating who Eve is. And then it's like this synergistic thing that starts to happen where it's like now certain people are coming into your life and certain things are happening. And then boom, here you are and you're deep in your purpose. And we're obviously going to get into that. And your purpose is serving the world greatly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and I always think about it that I think what it was, and the way that I see it as like serving a purpose for me of like all my years of education and sleepless nights and killing myself, for getting the great, good grades I did and all of that, was that for me, that was like the liberating factor for me. It's like once I got my degree, I thought like, it was like once I had that, it's like, okay, I have something to fall back on. I have this like safety net underneath me, and now I can I can do whatever I want.
That's rad.
Because I know if I fail, I'm good.
Yeah.
And and I really firmly believe that people need a sense of safety in their life in order to take risks.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. It's like there's this, you need that feeling of safety. You would think that people, once they feel safe, they don't want to leave their safe haven, but like when you feel safe, you feel more willing to take risks in your life. And I think about that that was actually one of the inspiring factors to my son's name, whose name is Haven. And I thought about that, about safety, and I thought about how, obviously what we do now is helping the world feel safe, but I thought about how safety really is what allows you to, like, when you're in a rocky foundation, it's really hard to, set these kind of scary goals or try something that you might fail at because you are so afraid of the rug being pulled out from underneath you at all times. And you see that all the time, around us, and why children in really, difficult situations just have a hard time, sticking to something because they're just in survival mode, right?
Yeah.
So once you feel that safety, which I got from my education, and I'm like, good, got my degree, I'm good. Like people know I can learn and I can be, a good employee if I ever wanted to be. Then that's when I was like, I'm going to pursue dance and acting. And, WWE opportunity came up, and that's when I just started getting real crazy.
Dude, that's such a rad thought process and realization and truth. That is so true. When you feel like you have a baseline of safety, you can be unsafe then.
Yeah,
you're like,
right.
Okay, cool. That's so rad. Did you realize that later? Or did you actually realize it? Because like you said, then you went out and did dance and then WWE.
I think I was kind of preparing for it because when I moved to LA, I always knew in the back of my mind that the entertainment world was something I wanted to kind of dabble in at the very least and maybe dive in at the most. But I continuously told myself, like, okay, while I'm in school, I'm not going to touch that world because I knew that, especially at, age 19, 20, 21, you get like one job and it's like, oh, you need to go do this for a month. Well, guess what? You have to take off school, so I knew that it would have delayed my ability to get my degree. So I purposely was like, had my blinders on. It's like, I'm not going to look outside of this and I'm just going to just go for this, accomplish this. And then once I do, that's like what's going to give me the freedom to then pursue whatever I want, entertainment and acting, dance, and then, later WWE. So I kind of knew that. I was kind of preparing for that. But I think, it's easier to see it in its full context, obviously now.
That's so impressive. There's two things I want to ask you. Where do you think that takes a lot of discipline? I know a lot of, just even through the nature of my work, there's young girls that I work with who, are at that point, they're already doing things in the industry. Maybe it's a little different because they're already out there, but then also want to go to school. And it's hard because it's like, okay, well, really if this movie comes, then how do I, how did you Where do you think, it's a better way to put it, where did that discipline come from for you to say, I'm not going to look in that direction, even though I know it's something that I want to mess with a little bit afterwards, but I need to do this first?
I think it partly came from knowing myself enough to know that, like, I don't do, and this is kind of a theme I've seen kind of weave in and out of my life since then too, is that when I have more than one kind of major thing going on, I don't really know how to, like, it's hard to do both really well. And I really want to do both really well. So it's it makes it just a little bit, I just knew, like, you can't give 100% to both of these things. And I would have tried and probably, like, killed myself in the process. Yeah. So I think knowing myself, knowing, like, I can't even go there. Like, I won't even let myself go there because it's just going to, I was already drowning in just school. And I had tons of, like, other, I actually chartered sorority at USC, like the first chapter on the West Coast of our sorority. And then I was in, like, a dance team. And so I had other things going on, but I kind of knew myself enough to know, like, I can't even go there yet because I want to go all in when I go. And so I think that's, some of the discipline came from just knowing that about myself. But I think a lot of discipline was, I think it actually came, I was a gymnast growing up. And there's a lot of things about gymnastics that are great, but I think probably one of the most important things is, as long as you can do it in a healthy way, you learn so much just about discipline. Like, and it wasn't even my mom saying, like, my mom was not a gym mom whatsoever. She was like, do whatever you want to do. Like, if you want to quit, fine. If you want to keep going, go. I had no pressure from my parents whatsoever. But I was at the gym 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day.
How long did you do gymnastics? That's so gnarly.
I did it until high school, basically.
So
until my freshman year. And then I was like, I kind of want a life.
How old were you when you started?
I started when I was 6, I think. Yeah, 6.
Damn, girl.
Yeah, so I want to say 9 years.
That's why you have the best shoulders ever.
Yeah, the other reason for that is shoulders.
Shoulders and arms.
Yeah.
It's like very superhero. It's dope. Wait, that's a big deal. So 4 hours a day.
Yeah, and this is, like, more like middle school, when I was kind of like middle school going into high school. That's, like, when it really gets, when you're you're a competitive gymnast. And you're just like, so you just have this routine of, like, go home, eat a snack, do your homework, go to gym, 4 hours later, get home at 8:30 or 9, start your homework, and you have tons of homework to do. So it's like, I didn't have even time to, like, think about anything else because it was always just go, go, go.
Did you love gymnastics? Funny question after saying you've done it for so long,
yeah. But I think about it, and again, it's hard to know. Sometimes, like, when I'm in things, I'm like, am I just doing this because I want to be good at it, or am I doing this because I really love it? And what I realized from gymnastics was my favorite part of it was floor and beam, which was, like, more dance, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of realized after all that, I was like, I probably really just wanted to dance, and that's why I got into it. Like, that's, like, the part that I actually loved about it. Mm-hmm. I loved the challenge, and I loved accomplishing new things. Like, every time I'd get a new move or got my, like, double tuck or, like, something where it's, like, a really big thing that you're like, okay, I accomplished that. It's, like, nice. I think I was also addicted to that. Yeah. But I think in terms of the actual love and passion, it was probably more on the performing side of it, like the meets and the dancing side.
So did you ever have the vision or desire to go to the Olympics?
I think, oh yeah, for sure. But
that was all about Nadia when I was...
Yes, yeah. And, like, that was, like, Carrie Strug and, like, like, all these amazing gymnast stories, Dominique Dawes. Yeah, I was super into the Olympics. But I was also very, like, I got to a point where I was like, yeah, that's definitely not happening. I mean... like, once I got to be 14, plus I started growing, and, like, I was pretty tall, for a gymnast. And then I just realized it wasn't what I absolutely loved, Mm-hmm. So I transitioned into dance then. And I started my own dance team in high school, too, with a group of girls. It was actually a step team.
Of course you did.
And I was like, let's just see how this goes, I was like, I want to do this. But, like, there wasn't anything there that was, like, more like hip hop and it was a step team. And it was like the first thing at our high school that was like that. There was like cheerleading, obviously, and I was like, it's not really me. We did that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I am an athlete by way of life, and I think that, and then, so as a young girl, I was a competitive runner, so I had that upbringing too, where sport was a big part of my childhood, up until like my teens, and then I started surfing, and that was a wrap. Everything else, it's like I cared about nothing except surfing. But I had the whole vision of I'm going to go to Stanford, I'm going to go to the Olympics, I'm going to do that whole thing. And what I love about, there's a lot of things I love about that, but looking back now, a lot of people will say you're so disciplined, right, with my regimen and stuff, and it's like, for me, it's just passion and love.
Yeah.
But I will say that there is, there are times where you're tired and you can't rely on motivation. So the only thing that you can rely on is your discipline in those moments.
Yeah, and your like routine, right? Where you're just like, this is what's happening.
I gotta do it.
This is what we do.
And that, I feel like, in that regard, it's almost like every child at some point should experience sport just for that reason. Team sports are rad too, because there's just so many benefits, regardless of how far you go with it or how even great you are at it. It's the structure and the systems. It's the mental framework that, even if like through my 20s, I wasn't calling upon my athlete roots as a child. I was like living in New York and Hawaii. I was doing all kinds of things.
Right.
But it's funny because once I kind of got all that out of my system, I went straight back into my roots as an athlete. And I'm so grateful that I had that, that this exists for me, that stems from my childhood.
Totally. And it's like that's the best time to establish habits. Is when you're so young. It's hard to, be 28 or 30 and be like, I don't really want to start, this routine or this discipline. And I always was very grateful for that. Like, and to this day I am. My ability to like be like, I'm really exhausted and I'm still gonna go to the gym or whatever it is. Like, it does have to be instilled in a young age, and I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, it's so helpful. Consistency is everything. I always say that. Okay, so WWE, let's go there. Because that's not... So you get your degree in engineering. Big deal. What happened between that point and... I know you said you went into dance for a bit after that, and then WWE comes to you?
Yeah, so the dance world, I basically got a dance agent, and I danced for the Clippers for a year, and then I did a bunch of other just like kind of like random dance jobs, and just really enjoyed it and loved it and had fun with it. But it's a hard world to be in, of course, because you never know when your next check is coming. It's that you're just going to these cattle call auditions, and it's pretty, it's rough, but it was fun, and it was the right time in my life to do something like that. And then the opportunity for WWE came up, and it was something that I looked at it and I'm like, okay, for one, like something about like these strong like female characters, which is kind of what the women wrestle at the time. They called them divas. Now they call them female superstars, luckily. So I never liked that name, but they, they were the kind of these strong female characters, and I was kind of intrigued by that, like kind of always been drawn to that. But also just what it incorporates. Like, wrestling is basically a combination of athletics, theater, and you're also traveling the world, So those were all things that, both obviously as an athlete and then as somebody who, the theater and the performance aspect of it. And then I just thought about all the opportunities that would come with kind of traveling and all that. And I thought, like, this could be a really great match. Like, and there's only one way to find out. And it's funny because this is something I always say is that, like, I have a hard time believing in 5-year plans. Because if I had made a 5-year plan in college, it would not have been that.
Right.
Absolutely. So sometimes these doors open and you're like, let me just peek inside here. Let's just see. And then you're like, okay, this works, and it really actually was a really good fit for me. And I really fell in love with it really fast for those reasons. It was incorporated all these elements that I really loved. And So, but it was a really, like that's where the discipline kicked in again, because it was like from the very beginning, they're like, cool, like get to work. It's like,
how was the audition for you? I want to.
Oh, so the audition, it was actually a contest that they did, and I ended up winning the contest.
Oh wait, you said that in the beginning.
Yeah, so it was like a contest, and the way that they were kind of found new talent back then was this contest. It was called the Diva Search, and their thought was like, if we can find somebody who's kind of who's athletic and who may have a certain kind of either look or appeal or whatever it is that they're kind of looking for, it's easier to find that and teach them how to wrestle than it is to find somebody who may already know how to wrestle but has some of these other elements that they might be looking for. That was kind of the concept, and that's shifted, I think, over the years. But so I didn't have to do any wrestling or anything but they did have like kind of athletic like contests and stuff. So they were like, okay, does she have 2 left feet, or like is she athletic enough to pull this off? And then the fans actually voted. So there was a fan vote-based contest, and I ended up winning that. So I won a contract with them.
Was that in LA?
So the initial like casting was, but it actually wasn't. It was in Florida. And it's crazy just how it all worked out, because I was still dancing professionally at the time. And I remember I was on tour with Mario, the R&B singer, and it just like so happened to line up that I could make those dates, even though like it could have been possible that I wouldn't have been able to make them. And it's like hard to turn down a maybe, like to turn down a for sure check for a maybe is like a hard thing to decide. So anyways, it all worked out just perfect. And it's just crazy, the ride that I had with them. And, I really, I've learned, like I take so much from my time there. Like I learned so much as a performer, as somebody who just like, again, I was in a brand new world. Yeah. So I had to work my butt off to like basically even be someone who was considered respectable in the ring. And naturally, again, I was, even though I had an athlete background, I also started training jiu-jitsu at the same time.
Okay.
Which we'll get into, I'm sure, in a little bit. But so I had this foundation, but still like learning to wrestle, and it's totally different. Yeah. Totally different animal. So I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to figure this thing out. And so I finally feel like I did. And I really started to just love it and enjoy the especially the in-ring aspect of it.
The inner ring? Is that
the in-ring, like meaning like the actual, there's a lot of other stuff like travel and all that.
Right.
It's a lot.
But the action basically is
the action, of course, is the fun part. So, and most people don't know like how hard that world is on the athletes and on the, on the talent. I mean,
traveling is really gnarly on the body. It's like the deeper I get into biology, the more I'm like, oh my God. When you're flying into different time zones, your whole circadian rhythm is thrown off. You're not sleeping good on planes. You're not eating good, especially, let's be real, touring around the country. I mean, I've been across this country.
You're getting out of like somewhere in Kentucky at like 11 p.m. You're getting out, and then you have to drive for like 4 hours to the next city, and you have to find food. So it was like, we'd be lucky if there was like an Applebee's open. That was like a gold mine. Right. We'd be super lucky if there was an Outback. But but usually it was like, you go to Wendy's and you're like trying to like, okay, I'll get this without the bread. And you're trying to piecemeal stuff, or you go to the grocery store that might be open and try to get some. It was so hard to eat well. But yeah, the travel is absolutely gnarly there. You're in a different city 5 days a week for year round. There's no off season. So there's never like, oh, take these 2 weeks off.
Right.
You're constantly traveling, constantly on the go for, and I think holidays are the main time that people go to events. So I remember when you're having to fly out on Christmas to New York.
Wow.
Because there was like a snowstorm coming. They're like, we need you to fly into the snowstorm. I'm like, cool, thanks. Let me just leave my Christmas dinner right now and jump on a plane to get into this snowstorm. It was, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But it was really, but I learned a lot about myself, and it's like a boot camp for life for sure.
Oh,
like, I'm like,
sure.
If I can do that, if you asked me to do like 1 week of that right now, I'd probably be like dying. Like you look back, I'm like, how do we do that?
Right.
But again, you're in this rhythm. It's like the switch is on and you're just going. Yeah. It's like this machine that you just keep going and figure it out. And then I'll while you're traveling, you have to find gyms, you have to train.
Right.
keep yourself healthy.
You got to hold it together for
yourself.
yourself.
And not to mention the actual wrestling obviously is hard on the body.
Right.
Extremely hard on the body.
Yeah.
But on top of that, then you're sitting in a plane or a car for 4 to 5 hours after each show. So
yeah, it's gnarly.
It's so much work. But yeah, it was...
You must have loved it.
I did.
Yeah.
Times. There were times that I was like pretty miserable.
Yeah.
But I think it was while I kind of still hadn't found my rhythm there. And once I did, I really enjoyed it. But I also knew you can't, especially as a woman, you just can't really have a life. Especially if you're not dating somebody who also is in the company with you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I was dating Rener the entire time I was with WWE. So it was kind of like, all right, time to
I remember what was
down
it like
and transition.
Oh my gosh, the amount of time that you guys would actually have together. It was when you actually. There was one moment I remember when you went longer than you've ever gone.
Yeah.
Like what was like 20 days. It was something like that.
Yeah.
It was just, and even all your closest knew about it because it was such a big deal.
Yeah. It was like how many days we actually got to spend together in a row. Yeah. It was like, whoa.
That's kind of special. I mean, we're jumping around. I don't care, but I do it all the time. Obviously, you already know that. But, I think that so long as there's the connection's very healthy, I think that could actually be very serving to the relationship.
It totally was for us. I think at the time of our lives where we were, like Rener is a complete workaholic, and especially was then. So the truth is, like, I don't think he missed me literally at all. Like, he would be, like, I would call him and he would just be working. Like, he worked so hard during those years, building kind of what now has been established and created.
Right.
And I feel like had I had been there, I would have been like, hey, let's, and he'd been like, sorry, I'm working. So it kind of, we both just were grinding it out during those years.
And how inspiring to both of you, because you're both simultaneously doing it in your own individual lives.
Right.
Yeah, that's so right. You were inspiring him. Like, you're out there kicking ass, doing everything you just said, making it happen. And then meanwhile, you know that your man is like grinding at home too. That's rad.
Yeah. It was, we're in our 20s. Like, that's what the 20s are for.
Yeah.
But in case there's any 20-year-olds listening, the 20s are for grinding it out. That's what your 20s are for, just grinding it out.
Grind it out, figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah, and that's what you're doing. You're figuring it out, but it's like the best time to just work your butt off, and like you've got the energy, you've got the excitement and the motivation.
You're willing to sleep on the floor, because once you get into the 30s, you're like,
that's the time you want you want the grind to slow down just a little bit, like just a little.
Your standards kind of, you're like, no, my bed only.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I want to know, when you, and this kind of trickles into everything else, nervousness. So you put yourself out there, performing, dancing, doing this contest for fucking the WWE, which is a huge organization. Were you nervous? Or I'm sure there were points that you were nervous. I want to know what your self-talk was like in those moments when you were nervous.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's such a big part of my life, actually, and overcoming that was such a huge thing for me. I mean, I didn't mention this, but like as a child, I was like painfully shy.
You're an introvert.
I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
I was painfully shy to the point where like they actually thought I kind of had some like, social concerns like regarding my abilities to like connect with other people. And I was really introverted and really shy as a young girl. And I think that finding performing in like dance was, I think, the first thing for me, was like my way to like come out of that shell. And it's almost like it's easier when you're putting on, like it's easier to put on a like play a role of like this outgoing person than it is to actually be that outgoing person. And so, but somehow by doing that, it kind of like trickled back into my life, where I said, okay, it's okay for me to do this and to be this. But had you told me when I was, in elementary school or whatever, that someday I'd be performing in front of 70,000 people at WrestleMania, I would have been like, yeah, no thanks, like I'm good. Like I wouldn't have believed it. And so it was a huge part of me, again, those challenges and like overcoming and conquering this. This is not something that was supernatural for me in the beginning, but it's something I kind of became addicted to, was like that feeling of like, okay, like I'm just going to do this. Like I remember I had a talk in front of 40,000 Boy Scouts at one point, like at some Boy Scout convention. And I'm just like, all right, here it goes. Like, and truly the only way you get better at doing that is just to do it. Is just to be like, this scares the shit out of me, but I'm going to do it because there's no other way to know if I can do it or not. And so you just go. But I think naturally the nervousness kind of subsides when you do it enough. But yeah, I don't think there was ever a match that I didn't get a little bit of nerves for. And obviously there was some that I got way more nerves for because maybe it was just a really big match, or it was there was a kind of a big move or big something that's going to happen in it.
What do you tell your brain?
So I believe in like breathing a lot.
Yeah.
And so breathing was a big part of it. I actually have this poem that I always recited. It's called Invictus. Mm-hmm. So that is one that like, that just gets me hype. Like, and if you haven't read it,
I'm going to put it in the show notes. I love it.
Yeah. Invictus by William Ernest Henley. I could recite it all now, but I won't do that for you. I'll let you look it out.
Part, if there's a favorite part of it,
well,
that gives you chills.
Yeah. Well, I would say the last line of it, which is, well, it says, I'm the master of my fate, but I say I'm the mistress of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
Ooh, sorry, I interrupted. Will you say that again?
Yeah. I am the mistress of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And that just means you run the show. Like you run your life show. And so every time I would recite it, and I would just like, that was like my, my build up and my like, all right, I'm doing this.
That was your process.
It was my process, yeah.
Like so, Michael Phelps, he's tapping, he's doing his whole thing. Yep. And then once you're done with it, you're kind of like, I'm good, I'm ready, I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was mine. For especially like really, big moments and things like that. It just got my mind right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Because I think it's very helpful when there's some kind of ritual self-talk. I'm a huge advocate for that. And again, it's also very, bridging a deeper connection to yourself.
Sure.
To be able to turn to yourself in those moments. It's great when we have anything external there to validate us, there to secure us. I mean, we all want that too. But when you can turn to yourself first and get what you need to move towards something that is, making you fearful, part fear, nervous and excited. Nervous and excited are physiologically the same thing. It's just a shift in the mindset, right?
Yeah.
To be able to turn to yourself to get what you need for that, that's really powerful. And so I think it's helpful for maybe those who are listening and who don't have something like that yet, but to try and, create or discover something like that so that.
And really knowing, I just think it's so important to hear that, like, not, people have this assumption that people who perform are these like naturally out, and some of them are, like from a very young age, you're like, look at me, like, look at, I'm doing a dance. But some of them are actually like extreme introverts and like have some social anxiety. And I actually, to this day, I think I still have some social anxiety. Like I remember for so long, it was like, I have to make a phone call to like AT&T or some shit. I don't know what. And I'd be like, hey, what am I going to say? Like this was a process that I went through in my life where there was times where I'm like, okay, am I going to say the right thing? Or it's crazy when I think about it, how you can do that. And then at the same time, like go live on, Monday Night Raw. And literally there's no second take. It's like you're going live, you're performing in front of thousands of people and it's live. Like you mess up, the whole world sees, millions of people watching. So you can be both. And if you are one, does not mean you can't be the other. It just means there's a lot of work to be done to get there. And they do help each other. And it doesn't mean you change yourself. It doesn't mean you become an extrovert and pretend you're an extrovert. It just means you have these moments where you tap into something, a different side of you that allows you to do that and to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm for sure, we talk about this all the time. Yeah. I definitely associate more with being an introvert. I think, you can definitely frame me as an ambivert too, just because, there's aspects that are extroverted, but truly I don't connect with I'm not, it's my recharge has to be solo. And the part why I feel so much more of an introvert than an extrovert is because I like a lot of recharge, which means I like a lot of alone time.
Yeah.
And it's really important to me and my process as an artist. And really, I feel like this might be a similarity with us where, when we are out there, we're all in.
Yeah.
And we're out there.
Yeah.
And it's like you completely kind of disconnect from, or eventually, maybe not initially, from that introverted part of you. And it's more of like, you're very present with the person or people in front of you.
Yeah.
And to do that, to be that, I think that is a very kind of extroverted quality or characteristic, maybe is a better word for it. So, but like in my life, like there's only so much of that I can do. So let's just say even it's work.
Yeah.
When I'm done, I need to be like, I'm literally tapped out in the best way though.
Yeah.
It's healthy.
It takes energy. It's like, it just takes energy from us. Like it's energy that we love to spend. And I love those. I feel so fulfilled in those moments. Even when I'm teaching now, that's like my new stage is like just being in front of our students. But even then it's like, it's so fulfilling. But at the end, I'm just like, like I need my time to, my recharging that's not how, I don't recharge by being out there. I recharge by coming home and, being by myself.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's hard because Heather and I are both introverts at heart. And so we both come home, we both recharge, and we just like stare at each other. We're like, it's like once we're recharged, like, okay, so how are you? Hey, how's your day?
Well, you both do, and I think it's a good transition to go into that a little bit. But Henner's obviously, so your husband, Rener Gracie.
Yes.
He is, because when he is not at home doing his introverted thing with you, he is out full force, like front and center, fully present, just giving.
Yeah,
energy.
you would never expect he's an introvert. If you've ever seen any of his videos, you're just like, whoa, this guy has so much energy.
The energy. Okay, cool. So let's actually transition there. So you're dancing, you start training jiu-jitsu, you meet Rener.
Mm-hmm. So I meet Rener and jiu-jitsu on the same day. And
makes sense.
Yeah. That all happened at once. And Victoria, my now sister-in-law, is the one who introduced us. Yeah. She was slick, and she's like, I want you to come do a jiu-jitsu class. And I was like, great, sign me up. Sounds awesome. She's like, yeah, and I want you to meet somebody. And so my first class was a class with him. It was basically like a semi-private. And I kind of fell in love with both at the same time, like right away. And, I was really, like in the beginning, like really amazed by what jiu-jitsu could do and did for me. It was like kind of to the point you're like, how have I never seen this before?
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you feel. So like when you do the trap and roll for the first time and you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, right. It is like, you're just like, why don't I know this? Like why doesn't everyone know this? Like, it was really, that was like one of my first thoughts. Because it made so much sense. It's not like some really like abstract idea or concept. It's like so common sense that you're like, how
and you're engineering, you have an engineering brain, right. And so much of jiu-jitsu, leverage, it's like, I think it's actually so beneficial that you have an engineering brain because you can kind of grasp things. I want to say easier, maybe even. So it must have really clicked for you.
Yeah, it's a great, like if you're somebody who, you don't want to be too cerebral, but I think that if you're somebody who is cerebral, it's a wonderful sport for activity to do, because it's so mentally stimulating. It's basically chess with your body.
Right. I just read something about how, and it makes sense, but I learned kind of the science behind it, just in that when you are doing something physical, some kind of sport, it could even be something like surfing. Jiu-jitsu is the greatest example to me, where you have to cognitively be also very in tune. Like so jiu-jitsu, it's like, you're doing all this physical movement, but you're thinking, not overthinking. Mm-mm. It's just like fine line of thinking because you're setting things up or you're avoiding or whatever. But it really impacts the health of your brain.
Yeah.
It's rad.
Oh, it makes total sense. It's like doing, like they say, like you should do you should do crossword puzzles or jiu-jitsu. Like basically it's such a similar function that
Right.
you're doing. Is you're thinking 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead sometimes. You have to react quickly to what's happening. I mean, there's
firing
so
different parts of
many.
the brain.
Yeah, it totally is. So I mean, yeah, there's many reasons why I fell in love with that, but really what happened was, at the time there was very few women who trained. This is 10 years ago, who trained at what was then the Gracie Academy, and it was, it was pretty standard for any jiu-jitsu school. It was just like not that many women who at least reached kind of the advanced program, like the master cycle, and and so you'd be lucky if you had one other woman in the class with you, when you're training, and really, so what Rener and I, really started to, talk about was how to get more women on the mat. Because for me, like I said, it was such an eye-opening thing that I'm like, why doesn't every woman know this? Like, how can this be that women don't know this? And there was already a program that was existing called Women Empowered, but at the time they were doing it as like a 6-week program twice a year, which no one can develop reflexes in 6 weeks. So it was a great introduction for women, but there was no kind of dedication to kind of the ongoing training for them. And so, and the hard thing about jiu-jitsu is, for those of you who don't really know much about it, it's essentially grappling. So if you walk in, if you're not familiar with what's happening, you walk in and you're just like, wow, there's a bunch of men rolling around each other.
Grappling also is like wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling.
Maybe those don't even
don't even know what grappling is.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just basically wrestling around. And when you don't even, especially if you kind of don't even know what you're watching, you're like, wow, they're literally just hugging and holding each other. And like, I mean, just someone who doesn't know what it is, that is actually what they would think. And that's not that inviting to a woman who walks into a martial arts school and who's like, great, so I could get hugged and and snuggle with some guy.
Legs.
Yeah, right, in the guard position. So it's naturally not a martial art that, on the appearance, just the appearance side of it, is super inviting and exciting for women when they see it. So really, it came. The question is, how do you? But yet at the same time, it's like, and of course this is me talking, but it is the martial art for women.
Absolutely.
Because jiu-jitsu is really about using leverage and technique and timing to be able to defeat a stronger opponent. And any woman who ever comes in contact with an assailant or an attacker or an aggressor, that man is going to be bigger and stronger than she is. So to rely on your strength or your athleticism or strikes or anything like that, it's just not necessarily reliable. It's just not. And so knowing that jiu-jitsu was just like, to me, I'm like, every woman needs to know this. How do we get more women to fall in love with this, like I have and like other women have? And so that was when we started. We basically filmed the first version of Women Empowered instructional, the online instructional and the DVDs, and then we started offering it as a class every single week. So women's only jiu-jitsu class. And it wasn't just women's jiu-jitsu, and this is, I think, where Women Empowered differs from a lot of women's jiu-jitsu out there, is that it's important to speak the language of what a woman wants out of that course. And for most women coming in, we're very self-defense. So we're very self-defense focused. And so we want, for a woman seeking self-defense, they don't want to come to a jiu-jitsu school and learn some random sport guard that they're like, how does this apply and why would I end up here? So Women Empowered was a very specific program that addresses the 20 most common threats against women. And that is something that's totally understandable. Whereas a woman comes in and you say, yeah, here's what happened. Like the most common questions women have and the most actual common scenarios, as we discovered from law enforcement and from survivors of assault, we address those. What if someone grabs your hair? What if someone's mounted on top of you? What if someone's pinning your wrist? What if someone was grabbing your wrist? What if someone grabs your waist? What if someone comes up from behind you? Like all of these, these kind of scenarios we put into a program, and we marketed it specifically for women. And so Rener and I started teaching that class every week. And just little by little over the last, 8-9 years, it's just grown and grown.
It's insane now. So I started training jiu-jitsu 9 years ago. I remember when it came about, I have witnessed the the rise of women, the influx of women who have started training jiu-jitsu, like not just even, it's gone from like, now there's more women sometimes training than men, even in, combatives or master cycle, which is, it's so rad. It's cool. It kind of reminds me of surfing. So when I first started surfing, this is before Blue Crush. There were women surfing for sure, but not that many, like I lived on Kauai. There was, there were like, we stood out, and then Blue Crush happens and it's like, boom. Now there's more girls in the water than men. And, it's really cool when you start to see that happening. And, I think, first of all, dude, it's almost like, thank you. I feel like it's so important to say, because, I think I'll just kind of validate everything that you were saying about, I do, as someone who's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 years too, I firmly believe that it is the most kind of powerful weapon, self-defense weapon that a woman can have. I've naturally been strong and tough my whole life, not just in my body and my mindset. My childhood definitely evoked that from me. I have 3 brothers. We're all super close. That. We're family, so all this. But for those that don't, it's like, before jiu-jitsu, I wasn't afraid. Like, oh, fucking what? I mean, it's funny to hear, because I'm super zenned out. And, but, I have that switch in me. When I first did the trap and roll, like, so the very first jiu-jitsu class, who, by the way, Vic, I love you. My brothers had been training already, and Vic was like, I'll be your partner for the first class. And I remember the feeling. It was so the same, where it's like, holy shit, how have I been walking around this earth?
Right.
As tough as I might be, whatever, and yet I understand now that I have been so vulnerable this whole time. I have chills when I say it, because it's like, oh my God, if some man mounted me, I don't care how tough I am.
No.
I would have done all the wrong things, which in Women Empowered, you guys teach that, where it's like, the struggling and I tire you out, and like, no, you don't want to do that, right? And so anyways, it was just, I can go so deep into it, but it was such a hook for me, where it's like, man, I need to know more of this. I need to know as much of it as I can. And it's, I love the idea of being a black belt one day, but to be honest, for me, it's not even the concept of being a black belt. What's so provocative about it for me is the information that you have to absorb to be a black belt.
Right.
So it's not like the status, and even though that it is, it's a fucking major accomplishment. But it's more of like, he just posted, I don't care, I'm saying this in that Instagram post where he's walking through the airport and it's like, no weapons allowed. No weapons allowed, and he stops and he looks at the door and he has to turn away.
Because he is an actual weapon.
He's an actual weapon. Your husband,
weapon.
Hunter, they're like legit weapons. So it's so rad to, to be empowering women, and all, with this master, self-defense weapon. And now you're doing it so let's move into this direction. It hasn't only grown in the academy. You guys are traveling the world and teaching this on a larger scale. I mean, it's like... Yeah. So we now have... So the Women Empowered program, which we teach in-house here, but we also, like I mentioned, created this DVD and online program, which is available at gracieuniversity.com. So we actually have women who are learning this online or through DVD all over the world. And amazing. Not only that, but we also have certified training centers who are teaching this program to women. So naturally, in all of our certified training centers, and also just to the women who are seeking this information, it's now finally, it's out there. And it's just really exciting to see. And of course, like, one of the most fulfilling things ever is just to see the progress that these women are experiencing. And not just like, oh, now I know how to defend myself. Like that's obviously part of it, but watching the kind of transformation that happens when you
experience that level of empowerment. And you, like you said, you experienced it, I experienced it. And I felt the exact same way. It's funny you mentioned that because, again, I was a gymnast. Like, I was like, up until 5th grade, I was stronger than all the boys. Like, I was always the one, like, winning the arm wrestling contest, winning the pull-up contest until Michael Mandrich beat me. I remember that very day. And I was like, and it literally got to the point where you're like, this is unfair. Like, this isn't, like, this sucks. Like, you, as in elementary school, you're stronger than all the boys, and one day you just realize, like, I was like, my little brother could beat me up.
Right.
Granted, my little brother trained jiu-jitsu too, way before I did, so that's part of it. But even though I was strong and, like, you know, former gymnast, a wrestler, all of these things, I would have no clue what to do. And I was put in, and I had some scenarios where I realized that when I was on the road traveling, some really scary situations that came up before I started learning. And so it's just one of those kind of naturally, it's like such it's kind of subtle now, I think, because it's just an accepted part of women, like, what they know is like, yeah, men are physically stronger than women. And that's
right.
it's just a fact. It is.
Yeah.
But that's why and I think that's what was so amazing about jiu-jitsu is that it was the first time I felt like, excuse me, it was the first time I felt like it was like cheating or like it's like leveling the playing field for the first time. And for some reason, like, you don't realize it until you actually experience it, that you're like, all this kind of subtle vulnerabilities that you feel on a daily basis, like, once those, not that they completely go away, because we're always going to be somewhat vulnerable to something, but it really it reflects on all areas of your life. You know, how you interact with your partner, how you interact with business partners, how you interact with coworkers, how you set boundaries for yourself, like, just the level of confidence that you get from knowing that. It's so strange how it really permeates all other areas of your life and your relationships, you know, and your connections. And so that, to me, is the most rewarding part of this, is watching women kind of like experience that through the training and them reporting on that and really sensing that. Because that is the ultimate goal, is not just like, oh, let's all choke guys out left and right, you know, like walk around this world beating people up. That's not the goal. The goal is that we won't necessarily need to, because we exude this confidence and this, you know, this feeling and this ability that we are capable of doing that, and that we if we need to, we can go there, you know. That's so dope.
I mean, in my mind, that is like the full spectrum, or the greatest definition of empowerment, you know. And it's the perfect name for the program, because I feel like that is exactly, you know, it's not just self-defense, it's being prepared, and it's kind of, you know, supporting these women to have a certain posture towards life that doesn't allow them, I hope I'm saying this right actually, but just helps them to not be victims in any area of their life, right? Because jiu-jitsu is a confidence builder. I mean, let's be real. Like, I'm like, there's something very satisfying of knowing, you know, listen, I'm a celebrity makeup artist by profession, right? And there's not many who also train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where it's like, you know, you're walking around, or you're doing this glamorous, quote-unquote glamorous kind of, you know, job, but then at the same time, like, you're on the mat getting sweaty and, like, avoiding, you know, chokes and all these things, and maybe, like, getting some chokes in or doing whatever. But it's it's funny, because I can go into a scenario that is outside of Jiu-Jitsu, and it could be kind of, you know, triggering my nerves, and then I can think of, you train jiu-jitsu, like, you're good.
Like, I can choke you out, actually.
Exactly.
So, like,
it's funny.
Once you can look at somebody and be like, yeah, I can still choke you out.
Well, you know what? And it's also, I think a deeper aspect of it is, this just came to me in this moment, it feels very primal. So it's like, I might be in some meeting trying to sell my product or services or whatever, and that isn't primal, right? That feels like that's very kind of in the artificial, our society, if this makes any sense. Fighting is primal.
Yeah.
It's fucking primal.
You can learn jiu-jitsu by watching animals. Like that's where jiu-jitsu comes from, is literally watch animals fight, and you're like, okay, that is this. This is the most primal version of being human and fighting is that. And it's and I know others have kind of mentioned this, but it really does feel like some level of kind of meditation for me and for many others I know because of that. It's like you're just in the zone where you almost have this survival mindset, you know, but at the end of the day, you're not going to die. Like you trust your partner, but it kind of creates that for you, without their stakes being so high. And I think that's really good for people, you know, to experience that level of like kind of being close to danger while not necessarily, you know, knowing that if you mess up, you're going to actually get choked out and, you know, die and die. So it's like that, but it's putting yourself in that position. Basically, it's getting comfortable with discomfort. And that is so important for women, for men, for everyone. But that's really at the root of it is you're put, you know, and that's why I am so adamant about obviously self-defense training and why, you know, I think a lot of self-defense programs out there want to. I feel like it's self-defense is kind of oversimplified a lot, which I think does a disservice to self-defense and to women who, you know, kind of want to connect with it. And there's a few reasons why it's oversimplified. One is they feel like you can take one class and then, like, you know, and while that might change some kind of principles and understandings, I think that can be beneficial. I think that it really takes getting comfortable with discomfort. And that only happens when you train continuously and you're like, oh yeah, I've been on the bottom of a fight with someone either in between my legs or someone mounted on top of me, pinning my wrist down. Like, I've been here before. You know, you don't want the first time for that to happen when you actually need it, right? So just by being there, you're triggering, you know, you're training your responses to basically to fight. And we found that a lot of, you know, both men and women in the sense of when danger comes, it can be fight, flight, or freeze, you know? And so you don't want that freeze to happen. And the only way to train to not have your body freeze is to train it to fight, right? Or to react. And then that's how this training, you know, really affects that. But I think the other thing that's interesting and that I think is important for people to kind of consider is that, and what's one of the things that when I kind of started really taking Women Empowered as something that I really wanted to invest in and to really make it for women, because, you know, obviously my husband and his family did a great job at creating the techniques. You know, that's what they're experts in. But believe it or not, they're not experts in women. They're not. So it's, first of all, translating it for women, but also really looking at, like, what does violence against women actually look like? And I think a lot of self-defense programs want to focus so much on, you know, and this is a scary part of life, of course, is the creepo at the gas station or the one hiding in an alley when you're walking home or walking to your car in the parking lot. You know, those are scenarios that do happen and they are scary and they're scary to think about and you want to be prepared for those. But more than 78% of assaults against women, sexual assaults, are committed by somebody that she knows. And that's really important when you're talking about self-defense, because when you're talking about how am I going to be protecting myself from violence? And if you're only focused on these strangers, you know, that could potentially harm you, you're actually not focusing on the most important danger, which is people around you. And I think that if, you know, many self-defense programs only teach these kind of aggressive tactics like eye gouges and groin strikes and palm strikes to the face, and those can all be effective in certain types of situations, don't get me wrong. But if you consider the likelihood of, you know, if it's your coworker who's like maybe not even a full-on assault, but maybe it's just crossing the line and borderline sexual harassment, if the only tool you have is an eye gouge, are you necessarily going to pull that tool out at that time? It wouldn't be wrong in my opinion, but like most, you know, but most people just wouldn't. They would say, okay, I can't gouge his eyes out right now. So what do I do? And that's why it's so important for women to have scalable options when it comes to self-defense, to be able to, you know, go there if you need to, meaning like if it's me or him and one of us is going to die, it's going to be him. Like you need to be able to get there. Like, and I believe that. Like, I know I can choke somebody out with my bare hands or legs, and that is really powerful, right? But at the same time, I know it's not always going to be called, hopefully it's never called for that. Most of the time, it's like, how do I protect my personal space? If someone tries to touch me or hug me in a certain way, how do I protect against that without necessarily bashing their face in? Again, wouldn't be wrong, but like if you feel uncomfortable, but you want these tools, how do I assert myself verbally to somebody who's making me feel uncomfortable? Whether it's somebody I know or somebody I don't know. And these are all self-defense tools that I think are kind of overlooked, is these kind of the in-between, these just neutralization, just neutralize a threat. You don't need to necessarily overpower them or defeat them. We just need to neutralize it and stay safe as women.
Absolutely. That's so brilliantly put. And it's so, I mean, that's, I think that is one of the ultimate differences is that, I mean, granted, I've never taken a self-defense class outside of training jiu-jitsu, but I think what's so beautiful is that you guys really focus on the mindset.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, I mean, it all starts there, right?
It totally does. To me, self-defense is 100% a mindset. I think it's the fastest way to get that mindset is to also have the physical kind of component to back it up. But really, the mindset comes down to worthiness. It comes down to worth. And that is where, in all the, the self-defense training I've done and all the women I've talked to and all the discussions we've had about women's safety concerns, one of the biggest problems women have is fighting that kind of, built-in response to people, which is, I need to be polite to people. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. I don't want to be a bitch. I don't want to, like all of these things that they fear, and it keeps them from setting the boundaries that they need or defending themselves if they need to. And so, and again, that just comes down to like really identification of worth, is when you say, no, I'm worth doing that for. And so even if I make this random person or my boss or whoever uncomfortable, I have the right to say this. And I have every right to, because I'm worth that. And it's such an important part of just the self-defense mindset. But I think that it's something about physically investing into your worth. So when you're every day you're physically investing into your safety on the mat and training jiu-jitsu or training self-defense, it's like you're physically embodying that belief.
Absolutely.
And so it's more than just saying like, oh yeah, I'll do that, but you're physically embodying this belief, and by investing so much in yourself, then when that situation comes, you're so much more likely to say, no, I've invested like all this into my safety. I'm not going to allow whoever it is to, make me feel unsafe or uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. I mean, that's such a confidence booster.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, yeah, that's a huge confidence booster. And to me, that's so sexy.
Yeah.
That's like, for me, like, that's hot as a woman. I mean, I'm sure you know this, you have this feeling, but it's so rad to kind of, be this woman out by myself, traveling the world, doing whatever, and like maybe you're out one night and you're wearing your heels and you're doing, and they don't know.
Mm-mm.
They don't know what you got built in you. And it's, you don't necessarily walk around thinking that, although, there are times where maybe the thoughts could come to the head because there might be, a man staring at you a certain way or whatever. And it's like, nah, dude, you trust me, you don't want none of this.
Yeah.
It's so amazing to feel that. I want to ask you, I feel like we got a lot of what you love, what Women Empowered and, teaching what you teach, how it kind of elevates you and inspires you. I want to know what's the hardest part for you about it?
So for sure, the hardest part is the reality of it. And that reality is made clear to us all the time with, women coming to us with their stories, kind of remembering all of our stories. Like every woman has their stories. And so remembering the reality of why we're there and constantly being reminded of that every day that's the hardest part. because it just makes you really angry, and it makes you really, it's just really, really sad, and makes you angry as somebody who is fighting so hard for this, for this cause. So I'd say that is definitely the hardest part is, again, hearing people's stories and hearing stories every day of how, violence is affecting women all over the world every day. But at the same time, that is also what really drives me and like inspires me to say like, okay, we just need to keep working. I will say that there's two ways to handle that. And obviously one way is clearly like start, making men figure it out, and that, to stop raising men who are violent against women. But while that's happening, we also need to feel like we, have some kind of control and power and some freedom while that is hopefully going on. And so, that's the drive is like every woman, every girl in high school, like, I'm sorry, I would much rather learn this than volleyball in high school.
Yeah.
Like in your physical education class. So, it's such a valuable tool that's just the goal, is get every woman in the world learning it and having it be a part of, their knowledge and their skills.
I mean, that, first of all, what an amazing vision if this could somehow trickle into part of, like normal school. Like, you've got to take a self-defense.
I just want to think about this for a second. Like, I always think about this. How would the world be different if women were like exactly the same, but were physically dominant to men? Have you ever thought? It's like a movie plot.
I was like, well, the scene that I turned to,
Wonder Woman.
Exactly.
Yes.
Where there are all these badass,
goosebumps.
Beautiful, just tribal women who are
so basically, yeah, we're trying to create that. But you think about it, like, what would the world be like? And granted, that's kind of, I mean, it's somewhat of a far off thought right now, but that's the idea, is that when you don't feel that physical intimidation, or the physical intimidation is not there anymore, like, how does that subtly affect everything? And like all the dynamics of, it's just an interesting thought, but that's ultimately the goal, is like physical threats and violence against women is drastically reduced, either on their end or on our end.
That's amazing. Is that so? So I wanted to ask you, what is the great, grand, lofty vision?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of it. I'll kind of like let you know what we're working on right now. So we actually just we're by the end of this year we'll be releasing the newest version of Women Empowered. So the first version, which is currently online and out there, is a 15-lesson program. We've modified the curriculum. It's now 20 lessons. And I'm so excited to release this to the world. It's really a much more comprehensive program. I want to be known as the most comprehensive self-defense program out there. Again, not just because of the physical self-defense, but also because of the principles and the mindset and the psychology that is discussed and talked about in this program. So that's going to be released this year. And then following that, we are simultaneously we'll be releasing the first Women Empowered Instructor Certification Program. So now, once this is released, women all over the world can basically learn this and then offer it in their communities. And we basically teach them how to teach this program. And there's a lot that goes into teaching women self-defense, a lot of things that you may not even consider, but taking kind of a trauma-informed approach to teaching self-defense is really important to us, knowing kind of the history and the stories that most women come into learning self-defense, because oftentimes they are healing from trauma in the past, and they want that kind of empowerment to help part of that healing. So yeah, we're really excited about that. And to me, that's like the beginning of just everybody, of all women being able to learn it. Is first you have to have those who are getting the information out there. So we need these instructors all over the world to be able to teach this program. And so by early next year, that Women Empowered Certification Program will be up and running, and part of it is online, and then you come to Gracie University to finish the certification. And so that's really exciting for us.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's like you're fertilizing.
Yeah.
You're getting it out there.
That's
and
it.
You know, and then maybe one day it will be in schools or, I mean...
Well, and that's the number one thing, because we get so many people saying, we would love to offer this program. And the problem is we just don't have enough instructors.
Yeah.
So there's schools that have said, yeah, we want to teach this to our kids, or we want to, and, you know, or, oh, is there one in Oregon, or is there one in, you know, this area of New York? And you know, because we don't have it there, they just don't have access to it. So we just need to give them access. And that's doing that by these, you know, women who are passionate and motivated by this and who go through the program and love it and want to share it with their communities. That's how they're going to be able to do that.
It's so perfect because the timing of it, in my mind, I was just like, oh my God, Eve, this is going to be so fun, like 5 years from now when we're looking back and it's just like part of school programs or whatever, whenever it's going to be. It's all moving in that direction, and it's even more so than just like woman empowered. I mean, the kind of forward momentum of women right now and the strength, like seeing superhero women. I mean, we've seen superhero women since we were kids, but there's just something different right now.
There is.
There's a shift. You know, I'm very pro women, pro men. I grew up with 3 brothers. I've never felt inferior or I've just always, like in my family, I'll say this. When we would do sport, you know, it was like, you're one of the boys, like get out. My dad didn't differentiate. And I think that was so helpful because it was always kind of like, it wasn't like, oh, you're a girl, so like you got to sit down on this or whatever.
And many families do that.
Many families do. I mean, I appreciate it now because because when you look at everything of what's going on and where a lot of issues can come from too, women's confidence, and a lot of it comes from that kind of separation factor where it's like, you know, gratefully I didn't have that, and my brother was always like one of the boys, you know, but very much a girl. But so, and I think that contributed to the strong woman, aside from like my mother and her being a great role model. But I love seeing, you know, this surge of like strong is beautiful, for example. I mean, even from a physical perspective where we have similar body types, we're mesomorphs, you know, we can build muscle, we have shoulders, and you know, now it's like girls want to be stronger.
Yeah, it's such an exciting thing to watch.
And it's so perfect with Women in Power because I feel like even if women have been intrigued by martial arts, you know, self-defense, I think that now there's more of it's almost like it's becoming more normal. I mean, listen, the UFC, MMA, fucking Ronda Rousey, it's like this is now becoming a thing where, you know, you can look good in a dress and still kick someone's ass, like if you had to.
And it doesn't, those don't have to be two separate things. And like for so long, that is what was thought, is like that self-defense would be taught by either some guy who's like, all right, ladies, let's go hit this bag. And like, and like, you know, like everyone's just, it's like it can be, you can feel, and however you identify, you know, whether you identify as feminine or you don't, but you can feel however you want to feel, and that has no effect on your strength. You know, you can be strong and identify however you want. So you can, if you identify as feminine, you can own that and keep that, and still be strong and deadly and an ass kicker.
Hell yeah!
And like that, seeing the world move in that direction is so refreshing, and so like let's like make basically being strong and deadly fucking sexy. Like let's, you know, that's it. It's sexy.
That's so hot. I love it. It's so perfect. I also want to say one thing, and I, you know, in women's self-defense, women empowered, there's a lot of focus on, you know, defending against a man, but I think it's also important to say that it might not be a man.
No, absolutely not. And we always say that in our program, is that we typically refer to the, you know, aggressor as a he, partly because statistically it normally is, but absolutely it can be a woman, it can be anyone, and in any type of situation. And we've, you know, I've actually had students who have been, you know, assaulted by other women, and so works on either gender. Any gender, and it's knowing that while, I think that women are typically targeted for different reasons, and obviously men are. And that's why it makes perfect sense to have a program specifically for what they're kind of targeted for.
Totally. That's rad.
But it works on anyone.
I want to ask you this. When you look at your life now and everything that you're creating and your deep purpose with this, and I want to go into mommyhood quickly too, but when you look at your life now and you think back to like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, does it all kind of make sense? Like, can you connect dots? WWE, engineering, like, can you connect dots? Or is this like a complete, I would never have imagined this scenario? I'm curious.
I think I still probably wouldn't have imagined this. Like, if of all the things that, I thought I might have been, this is not necessarily one of them. But the dots are completely connected. It all makes sense. It's kind of like, oh, this is basically the path that needed to happen for me to get here. And so I don't feel like anything was wasted. I don't feel like anything was not meant to be a part of my life. I think that, all of those, like, I always kind of had a similar purpose, and it just was kind of manifested in different ways. And now it's just manifesting in a way that's really, really fun and really exciting for me, and something that, is obviously an opportunity that came up. Granted, obviously, who I married, and kind of that there was this wide open space for someone to fill. And it's like, there's nobody, like, when you think of like, oh, who's the world's women's self-defense expert? Who is that? Like, that's just not a space that had been filled. And even in the family that I married into, that space hadn't been filled. And so I'm like, let's fill it. Like, there was an opportunity again. Like, I don't believe necessarily in planning out everything exactly to what, some people have a very specific goal and they want to go for it, which is great. But for me, it's like, I've always been one to like, let's see what doors open and what opportunities open for me to like take advantage of, and to, really grow from, and, see kind of how that works out. And for me, this one just fit in so perfectly. Again, even though WWE and self-defense are like actually completely different, to the kind of normal, like, common eye, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, she was a wrestler. Like, she used to wrestle in the ring. Of course she can defend herself, like, right. So they're similar brands, I would say. Yeah. So it totally makes sense. But I think, yeah, it's a very roundabout way of getting there. Right. But it was all meant to happen the way it did for me to kind of come to this point, I think.
You're a mom of 1.5.
1.5.
1.5. You mentioned before, but you have your, like, just ridiculously adorable boy, Raeven. And very shortly, there's another boy coming out into this world to make it a better place, which is so exciting. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to ask you this question after. Okay. Moving into mommy, like, that's a big deal, because that's a whole new kind of universe that you step into, right? I'm not a mom yet, aspire to be. But in witnessing you, it's so inspiring to me as one of my best friends, just to see what a wonderful mother you are and how you fucking navigate, like, you're a mom, but you hold everything up on the highest level still. And it's gnarly. I mean, being a mom is a sport. You care. I'm seeing it, Victoria. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's a whole nother world. And it's a super fun and exciting, and a world full of growth and learning. And I think that it like allows you to really, I kind of mentioned this already, but you, like, of course, everything you're thinking about is like, how do I not mess this up, right? Like, how do I make this human the best human I can? And some of that takes a lot of deconstructing yourself and really looking at yourself and saying, okay, what am I modeling for him or for your child? What do I not want to model for them? What do I want to model for them? And it's like, you can easily go through life a lot with not necessarily thinking in that way. And then once you have, like, okay, this is my actions are potentially affecting someone's life and who they turn out to be, it just takes a whole different like it just changes everything about how you look at yourself, and your history and your past. And so, but it's actually a beautiful growing experience because a lot of those things you're like, here's the things I love about myself and that I want to be a part of him, and then here are the things that I hope he can kind of find on his own, right? And so I'm absolutely loving being a mom. He is super fun, and he's 2.5 right now, and my second one will be due soon enough, and they'll be about 3 years apart. But yeah, 2 little brothers.
2 little weapons. I'm sorry, no. But it's like, I'm sure I'm not the only one in your life who tries, like, sometimes just the imagination of like what they're going to be like even in their teenage years. Because we know, I mean, between you and Henner, it's like, man, they're going to be, they're going to be contributors to the world because both of you are.
Well, and that's ultimately what you want for your children, I think, like without assigning them a path. You don't want to assign your child a path, but I think that, I want, especially raising boys, I feel like it's so important to just raise good boys that while they hopefully, will pursue jiu-jitsu and all of that and be also deadly and really, powerful, I want them to be sweet and again, like you said, contributors, and just I feel like raising good men right now is so important, because I remember Henner saying, like, don't you want a girl because she'll be a little like, firecracker like you, or just like a little, and I'm like, that's, a cool thought, I guess, is to think of like what kind of girl you might raise. But I feel like if you really want to help the cause for women, you actually need to raise good men, raising good men is so important these days. And so it's something I take very seriously, and finding, out how to raise boys that are kind of in touch with themselves enough, like in their emotions, where they don't have to grow up and be angry and be, like macho and have to kind of compensate for that in other ways. And so he's got great role models, and that's what I love. I love that my son has such great male role models around him.
He really does.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be, I have no doubt at all that they're going to be nothing short of that, and then some in their own amazing ways. And it's so true. I mean, my boyfriend of many, many moons ago, who's one of my best friends, JP, I always would tell him, man, I would tell his parents, actually, like, JP is a product of good parenting. Because even in our departure, like in breaking up, I mean, it was just done in the most reverent way. Everything was just so, and that's why he's family. He's one of my best friends. So, there was just the whole way through our relationship, which was several years. It was just so, it was fun and all these things, but the main thing was respect the whole way through. And I really believe that is what, not all relationships have to, quote unquote, go the distance and work out. Or let me say it like this. My relationship still worked out with him, and it doesn't mean that we're together or not. Like, that has nothing to do with it. It worked out because through our transition from going to, being romantic to being friends and family, the respect from day one to day now has been upheld. And, his parents are incredible. And the way that they have raised their 2 boys it's obvious. I mean, it's affected them that way.
That's the goal.
That's amazing. And I know we're running out of time because because you do have Haven. And okay, so we're going to rapid fire, and we're going to do another podcast because you're stuck with me. It's one of my best friends.
I love it.
I want to get into some fun girly stuff. But what I did want to ask you is if you can pick one or a couple things, but what do you feel most proud of about yourself at this stage in your life?
That is a hard one.
I know.
Oh,
I was such an asshole.
Make me think about myself and talk about myself.
It's funny. Why you think I'm going to say this? It's so interesting. I think society, there's this whole like, be humble. And you know what? Sure, to a certain degree. But what I don't like about this over humbling thing that I think exists in society is it doesn't allow, it affects what there's a lot of things that I'm fucking proud of about myself. And that pride for myself doesn't ever translate into I'm better than you.
No.
It's strength of character. It lends to my purpose. And so I'm saying, like, sometimes being humble, you know, this concept of humble can affect that, where it's like, no, like, don't be an asshole.
And I think especially with women, that happens a lot. It's like, oh, don't be too, like, no, actually, I'm just really proud of that. No, it's just interesting because one of the things I admire about you is how much time you dedicate to reflecting on yourself and like journaling and really like looking, into yourself and connecting with that. And that's one thing I do need to work on is that. So I don't get much time to like really think about that. I have tons of gratitude for so many things in my life. I'm constantly, really grateful. But in terms of what I'm most proud of, I think at this specific point in my life, I think is a level of balance is what I'm most proud of. I'm really proud of, I feel like I've reached this point where I'm really proud of what I've done for, my career, I guess I'll say, or for Women Empowered and for kind of my purpose there. But also I'm at this really fun stage of motherhood too. And I still feel like I have really great connections with my friends and family. So just the sense of like the level of balance that I feel like I'm at this particular moment. I mean, ask me again in a few months when the second child is born. But I'm really proud of that because I think balance is important, and you can have one thing that's really great, and if the other thing is not there, it's like just a constant struggle. And I feel like I finally found that, and some of that took me letting some things go to really get to that place of balance. So being able to let those things go and just really focus on what is super important to me right now and balancing that. And Haven loves his mama, and it's so fun. It's it's rad. Such a good, he's like really tooting my mommy horn right now. Like this may not last forever, but it's just so fun to be like him, to just really connect with you and want to snuggle and want to play with you. And I feel really, really good as it's always that scary thing that when you're working a lot, you're worried you're going to lose connection or something, and it hasn't happened whatsoever. And I'm just really proud I found that balance.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think that it goes back to, when you said, when you're at USC and you're like, I'm not even going to look over into the entertainment world because I need to be all in here. I really believe balance is an interesting concept to me because I'm like, when you think of balance, it's like, oh, I can juggle equally at the same time. Like, I'm juggling, basically. To juggle is
sure.
what you have. But I almost feel like, because I can validate this as well as one of your closest friends, like, you are so all in with that which you love. Like, you have 100 things going on, but you'll still make sure that, when you're with your people, or if your people need you, or what, like, you're right there all in, to the point where it's like, how are you fucking doing this, Eve? Like the birthday, you threw my 40th birthday, and I'm like, no, I don't want to add anything to your plate. And you're like, no, please, like, I need to. And it's like, how do you do that? And I think that your ability to be organized and separate, so that when you are with family, you're with your family. When you're work, you're with your work. I think that's a very, it's like a talent. It's a skill. It's something that super inspiring. I think that many people are capable of. It's just kind of, you have to have the willingness and the want, right? To say, this is what's important to me. I'm going to make sure that, I'm investing equally. And even if it's not at the same time, even though with you it is, you know what I'm trying to say, right? It's like,
yeah, well, and you said it earlier, but it really is when you're operating from a place of passion, then all of that becomes very easy. Like, it becomes very easy to be very present in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Instead of just going through motions or feeling like, oh, I have to do this because whatever. When you're doing something because you want to do it, it makes it actually really easy to do that thing, even when you're having to do a lot of other things. It just makes it fun, and it's so much easier to do that and really do well at it.
Yeah.
I think.
When love is driving you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And you are all love. Girl, I love you.
Love you.
I know I got to get you out of here. Thank you. It's so fun.
So fun.
I can't wait for the next. And Oh man, and then and soon there's like going to be another one of you and her out in this world. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting to do another podcast with you when baby number 2 is out, and we can talk about.
Then we'll just talk back about balance again. Let's get that. We'll have that talk again.
Before I let you go, is there anything that you? Well, there's a few things. Is there anything that you want to put out there that you haven't said maybe yet, or like just last thoughts or?
I don't know when this is being released, but we're having a free women's self-defense seminar on July 14th.
Ooh, okay.
July 14th at Gracie University, which is in Torrance, California. So anyone who wants to attend, you can email seminars@gracieuniversity.com. I hope that's the right email. If not, I'll
put
tell
everything
you
in the
when
show notes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one. And yeah, if you're interested in learning self-defense, gracieuniversity.com is where you'll go.
And maybe be an instructor one day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If this is something that really, resonated with you and that sounds exciting to you, it's a great journey to get started on. So gracieuniversity.com, and you can go, it talks all about the program, how you can learn from home, how you can learn at a certified training center if you're nearby one of our certified training centers, which are all over the world. So it's a wonderful journey to begin, and I hope you'll join me on that journey.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing. I love it. Yeah, and all this information will be in the show notes. Can you tell our listeners how they can keep up with you?
Yeah. So I'm on both Instagram and Twitter, mostly Instagram these days, I would say, at Eve Torres Gracie. And yeah, gracieuniversity.com as well.
Perfect. Okay, Mama. I love you so much. Thank you.
Love you.
With all my heart. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this goddess queen, deadly beauty, who, fortunately, I get to call one of my very best friends. And you will be hearing a lot more of me and her down the line. So you can look forward to that. And thank you so much for spending your time with us. I will catch you on the next one. We need to eat. Okay. Peace.
Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to check out this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please share it with your friends. Head over to iTunes, subscribe to this podcast, rate it, leave me an honest review. Let's connect. I'm so excited to do that in this space and really create content that elevates your mind in support of your best performance in life. You can find me on Instagram at blackbeltbeauty. I'm active there every single day, and I look forward to connecting with you all. So thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next one.